Hey, what's going on, stranger? Yeah, it's been a minute, huh?
Hurts, too much time. I jumped off her boat and we went MCL first, we went ACL all the way. Oh, no. So I'm just old. I got used to all that too. I'm just bad. Me too.
Would you do this one?
Oh, no, it was years ago.
Oh.
Like, I go down the steps one at a time, no.
She's so like.
That's what I said, one at a time. No, I just, yeah. No, that's better than that one. Everything's gonna be fun.
Yeah, she's mixing stuff up for you.
Well, I didn't think I was smoking drugs.
All right, why am I sitting here? Where's the vice president at?
You, here, who is the vice president?
Vice chair, she usually sits over there, so I'm gonna take her seat.
Oh, well. She was on seating.
We're gonna confuse them all. When the music stops, you gotta sit down.
Because you move, like you got cooties or something.
Okay, so who is it?
Ally Odette.
Ally Alden.
Well, there, you haven't met her.
No, we haven't. Hey there.
are you doing?
Good.
See there.
David, Susie, Henry, nice to meet you.
Oh.
Yes.
For whatever reason, they didn't load up to my iCloud, and I tried to send them to you in the regular one, the weekend after the last one. And then I realized today that.
How are you doing?
Running on master. I'm on the other side of a cold, so I thought of it.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
It's going around
Yeah,
again.
just in case, just in case.
So I just stopped out and met the new owner of the Ugly Truck, Ugly
yeah.
Mug. Is that what it's called? Ugly Mug?
Ugly man.
Yeah. Nice, young guy.
I know he's working hard up there.
Yes,
He's trucking.
Alex.
Where's that? gonna be?
After the new.
Yeah, right up here. to the town of Tallulah Falls, February 15th, 2023 agenda for the. Oh, sorry, I said that. I read it just. Sorry, 2024. All right, we have one member missing, Miss Adet. Would someone like to, adopt the agenda as written? Okay. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Okay, the approval of the minutes from January 10th, 2024. Anybody wants to make a note? Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
Harry, okay, second that,
Second.
all right, all in favor? Right, and then, there is no old business, but new business to review the zoning and ordinance permitted for conditional use, including but not limited to home occupation. I know that Linda has, is gonna prepare us for what is being asked.
So in your packet, I've printed out the, what is in our current zoning, for R1, and R1, R2 agricultural. And so just for you to be able to look at and have handy, what are the permitted uses and what are conditional uses? So each zoning category has certain uses that are permitted. That means like you can do those in that district. If it's a conditional use, that means that you would have to apply for conditional use zoning. So you'd have to go through the zoning process, file your application, pay your fee. We'd have to advertise it, have the public hearings, and then you all would hear it, make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council would have another public hearing, and then they would decide if you could do it or not do it. So specifically, it's probably a good idea for you all to look over, the permitted and conditional uses anyway, so you're familiar and, any other things that you see, that you may want to make recommendations about. But one thing that keeps coming up for me is the home occupations. So there's several people that over the years have been asking for a business license for a home occupation, an office in their home. Or various things. The ones mostly have been just offices in their home. So that is currently a conditional use. It's very specific in that for the conditional use, it says home occupations conducted within the principal building by persons residing on the premises, provided that no more than 30% of the floor area of the principal building shall be used for such purpose. Automobile repair facilities shall be excluded, and that sufficient off-street parking shall be provided so that traffic can be handled without hazard or undue congestion in the neighborhood. Where noise is generated, an appropriate noise resistant fence or combination fence green buffer area shall be established. So, and then it goes on to other things that are conditional uses, kindergarten, nursery schools, daycares, different things. But if you go past what's in our current zoning, there is a sample for discussion. And I'll pull it up on the screen for the people in the audience.
I have a question, I guess, while we're doing that. It mentions accessory buildings. Does that include like a garage, is that an accessory building?
It is, it's not if it's attached.
It's
I mean,
not.
unattached.
It is.
It's detached, then it's an accessory. Okay, so the sample for discussion actually, it's based a little bit on the city of Clayton's, with some minor tweaks. So I pulled up, theirs, it seemed to be pretty reasonable. I kind of tailored it a little bit towards, some, you know, like the 30%. I think theirs was like maybe 25%, or it was a different percentage. Anyway. So, I tweaked it just a little bit, but these are absolutely just up for discussion, things for you all to consider, you know, that might be not so, in our conditional use for home occupation, it's very vague, right? So there's a lot of things that it probably makes sense that you would have to maybe ask for permission to do. But then if we can tailor it a little more specific, like what I've got here for discussion, then those things that clearly meet the standard, you know, wouldn't have to go through, jump all through all the hoops and that kind of thing. So that's basically what I wanted you guys to look at and consider and talk about.
And, on these home occupations, I guess we look at different, criteria for each of the zoning R1, R2 and ag, correct? We'd have to apply different standards to each of those.
Or, you know, or just whether or not they are allowable, you know, if you adopted something like this that allowed these certain home occupations,
Yeah.
then you could decide, is it appropriate then also for those other districts, or
Yeah.
would you change it?
You're right, okay. So are we discussing it now, or?
I think this is pretty reasonable. I mean, most of these that are allowable in this new ordinance, there's probably a lot of it going on, so if we could get a occupational tax to govern.
About that, then.
Yeah, so it's just what the,
I
yeah, there would be a business license involved, not so much, you know, the, occupation.
Well, that's what we.
That- Everybody
Business
commonly
license.
knows it as a business.
So, I mean, I've got a question for you. If you have a daycare going next to you and you're living, you really think that 6 kids playing out in the backyard is gonna be a normal residential noise level? I don't think you could achieve that. I just don't think that's achievable.
adjust that number.
Well, most daycares are between 8 and 5, you know. So what is the noise level? When does it exceed that there is no? I mean, I'm not familiar
It
with.
just basically says that whatever business you're running or using your structure for, it basically needs to follow the levels of a residential home.
Right,
You
but
know,
I mean, most noise levels go beyond 9 o'clock at night, or, I mean,
I'd say the 6 is probably because that's the state's lowest ratio that they have is, 1 adult to 6 infants, which is absurd. But that's probably why it's at 6.
can you imagine that?
I know, that's how you get an employee clinic. But it's 1 to 6 is their smallest ratio, that's probably why 6 is just the standard thrown in there.
The other question I have is, would our city have anything to do with the regulation of the insurance or the inspections on anything like that? In other words, obviously you can't have your business license unless you have the proper insurance and the proper inspections for that. So is that something that we would have to get involved in, or is that just a statewide kind of deal?
That'd be state regulated. I mean, you would get your, like I said, you get a business license here, but as far as,
So it would be up to the state to notify you of compliance.
I
Or
think they would just
non-compliance.
notify the owner of the business. I don't think the city would ever get involved with that unless they were out of compliance with what the city's
Okay,
regulations were.
okay.
I think that would get us into some major trouble.
Yeah, well, that's why I was going down that road, is to try to stay away from that. I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't think you'd want to start getting involved with it.
Yeah, well, currently, currently in the conditional uses, number 2 says kindergarten, nursery schools, daycare center serving not more than 10 persons. Provided outdoor play areas provided for each child in the outdoor play area shall be enclosed by an impervious fence as required by the Georgia Department of Human Resources. So I guess in our current ordinance, it would be, no more than 10 if it's approved conditional zoning, and then I guess we would have to ensure that there was, the fencing.
The state would do that too,
Yeah.
if they got a permit.
So on number 5, where it talks about 30% of one floor of the principal building. And so you look at scenarios, say a 4,000 square foot home, and you took 30% of that, you'd have 1,200 square feet, whereas you had a 1,500 square foot home, 30% that would be 450. So you have these different sizes of business depending on the size of the house, which, like you've got a bigger house.
Floor, actually.
yeah, it's just one floor.
One floor, okay, my house is one floor. And then, that taken into consideration, like my house was built in 1935, I have an old house. I have a garage with a room in the back that's used for, as a bathroom, it's been used for like a guest room. Which would be a perfect home office. So though I would have a smaller footprint than a lot of other houses, I would be excluded on that use. So I don't understand really the outbuilding concept. Maybe we should have a max square footage to exceed aggregate square footage. I mean, so why exclude that
I think
component?
the idea of it, and that's certainly something that y'all can talk about and make a recommendation on, but I think it's so that somebody doesn't put an accessory building on their property specifically to run a business.
So I think that would be a good clause to add in, maybe, because I got attached to my garage in the house, I think a breezeway, right? But I'm not looking to do that.
Right.
I just think of like, is, different size houses, different concerns, different configurations. But, there's existing structures that are there,
Can we throw in a year that says prior to? 2024?
That's really hard to monitor, or to keep up with. I don't have an inventory of every structure on every lot.
you don't require building permits.
But if it said something, maybe accessory buildings that are not exclusively used for that business, or,
Right,
like,
right.
it's a garage, so you're
They're
using
not-
it for a garage.
They're not
too,
constructed, I was more of a storage unit than a garage.
but- Well,
You look at it, it's kind of scary, kayaks and stuff like that.
right, I mean, there's probably
Just
a way to word it.
right now.
What y'all want. Or maybe you're okay with having, an accessory building be used for business. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something you need to,
I would-
if you're not, then needs to be a way to limit it.
There's it's over 180 square feet and has electricity if you get a building permit for it, correct?
Not in Raven County, no.
But in Twin
Well,
Falls.
here you do.
Oh, in Tulare you do? Oh, that's good. I didn't know that was Raven's like, could never figure that one out. But
You're supposed to.
there's no inspector there, right? You
Right.
really-
Not
yeah.
for 12 hours.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, we do.
We got Linda.
a little- We do a little
Put your hard hat on.
miniature inspections. My homes.
Yeah, those are kind of my major kind of questions.
I mean, you could take out the daycare, or you could change the number.
You can strike that down, 3 or 4 kids. I could still give someone an ability, like someone's grandmother. My grandmother used to take care of a couple of kids,
I just really think that in certain, you can't really limit what area of R1 you're gonna put a daycare in. In other words, if it's R1, it's R1. You can't say, well, it's this area or that area.
No, this is.
And I think you have to realize that there's certain areas that's gonna be unacceptable.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just the way it is.
if you're a licensed one, your home has to conform to certain rules that most of the houses in R1 are not gonna conform.
Right, no, I understand that, but what I'm getting at is the noise level of certain businesses is gonna create an inherent problem. And I think that we need to be aware of that going forward. Because what we need to do is try to figure out what might cause a problem in the future and try to narrow that down a little bit.
Well, I thought too, like with an artist, you have an art studio at your house, but you don't necessarily want a gallery showing where you have 100 people, loud music, open bar thing going on either at night. But a studio, we perfectly fine.
And then even some of those could stay conditional also, some of the, you could pluck out a few things and keep them conditional on approval that, you know, you don't have to, you have to make your neighbors and agree, like, oh, this is fine, you know, I like the sound of kids or.
I didn't notice we didn't mention kennels either. Kennels, no kennels,
Grooming.
dog grooming kennels. I didn't see that in there as well. I'm on the home occupations page, it says sample for discussion.
Yeah.
All right,
Right, these are the old loud.
But then it says specifically prohibited underneath there too.
and basically I'm at like number 12 in that.
Yeah.
That's where I got the 6 people
Right.
for the,
6 feet on top.
but I didn't see anything about any kind of kennels or dog grooming or any of that in there.
But if it's not listed, it wouldn't be allowable,
Well, if
right?
we put it underneath the 13 where it says that these are specifically prohibited,
Oh,
we could put in there kennels and dog grooming. I think dog grooming if they're inside the house or
Yeah.
the accessory building, but if you put them in a kennel outside to keep them until their owner comes back, it'll be,
maybe more
it
than
cause problems.
2 dogs at a time or something like that, you can put a limit on that, you know, there's a problem, they could rule up the license or something. I mean, those are possibilities.
Well, these things are never really a problem until they are.
Well said.
No, and we had that talk before about setbacks and having a dog run on your setback.
Yeah,
Your
'cause my
setback
house
area.
would be perfect for a kennel.
But like between me and Tamara will be horrible for it.
Exactly. Well, the bear would enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, I just think we need to tread carefully as you kind of touching on, you have to be careful who you include and exclude
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
Cause everybody always thinks, oh, you're picking on me because I don't have a big enough house, or I don't have the right layout, or I want this business rather than that business.
Yeah.
You're always gonna have that.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna be disappointed.
You know, we try to be as fair as possible, I feel, and for the community and the neighbors too. but
Right,
also
well, I'm
the
just, I'm
citizens.
agreeing, I understand that going
Yeah.
forward. But you also have to be careful about that Pandora's box.
Yeah, definitely.
I think this is pretty straightforward. I just, like I said, I worry about, certain kind of businesses, but I mean, you have to, if you say R1, it's R1. Doesn't matter which house you're talking about. If it's owned R1, it's R1.
Yeah.
So,
Number 8 kind of covers some of it. I mean, it's, no emission of smoke, dust, odor, fumes, glare, noise, vibration, electrical or electronic disturbance detectable at the lot line or beyond exceeding a normal residential level.
yeah, well, that's where I got that for the daycare. In other words, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you got 6, 8-year-olds out in your backyard. That's gonna be a birthday party. Now, that's fine once a week or once a month or whatever have you. But when we can think about terms of Monday through Friday, every day. At this time, the kids go out and they play. It's a fact of life. So those 2 hours a day, whenever they might be, there's gonna be a lot of hollering and screaming. And it is what it is. That's the business that they were allowed to run in that house. But you're gonna have quite a few neighbors on the third week of that and going, hey, this is a problem. And now you're already dug in it because they have a license and they've done everything legally and they asked all the questions. Well, we're standing here going, well, we allowed them to do that, but sorry about your luck.
Hey, man.
Maybe you should open up a kennel. You know, that's all I'm saying is, you know, you have to be careful with the businesses in residential areas. And what you allow and what you don't allow.
Are we allowed to ask any questions, by the way? Is this?
Yeah, there's a time for that,
Well, I was kind of going, this daycare, would that, I mean, is this including all homes like up top the mountain as well as below? Okay, well, up top, sound travels. I mean, just when my grandchildren are up here, I have to remind them to use an inside voice outside. Because they're always screaming and playing. And we can hear people talking depending on which way the wind blows. So having a daycare. I mean, most of us are retired and we come up here to relax. And get away from screaming kids, basically, grandchildren. Type thing. So I definitely would want my home to be around any daycare. So if this is gonna come up, are neighbors allowed to vote or really not to let it happen?
This is just for discussion. I mean, they
Yeah, well,
can,
that's
they
what
can
we're
say
doing.
no more than 2 people. They can say strike
Can you
they
just take it
child
off?
care altogether. This is just totally, but yes, to answer your question, this is the first step of the
Yeah.
discussion. Once they come to some consensus, then we'll get it in ordinance
Yeah, 'cause I
form.
hadn't read that one before, so that's one.
Yeah, they would be in ordinance form and then we'd have a public hearing, advertise, do all the things. Yeah.
Well, I think honestly, what we have here, what I'm trying to get at, what I've tried to bring up is we have that number in order that says, you know, number 8. There shall be no emission, smoke, dust, odor, electrical disturbance detectable at the lot line. So considering that, it's not feasible to have that particular business and become compliant with number 8.
Then that could remain conditional,
Exactly.
right?
And I would say that that's probably gonna be a no on that because it falls under this particular category. Same thing as kennels or something that's inherently noisy. We understand, but you're gonna have to look at agricultural district or business district to have that. Not that you can't have that business in Tallulah Falls.
Right.
You just can't have it in R1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
It's not that we're trying to keep daycares out of Tallulah Falls, because God knows we need plenty of them.
Yes, we do.
But we need to be careful where we allow that. So I would think that that would be encouraged in an agricultural, where you have farm animals, you have poultry, you have all these things that are there already. And, you know, and so those are things that I think we need going forward, be careful, you know, we strike that out. And that way we don't have a problem with it. And if somebody asks in the future about it, say, well, you have to look at your zoning. You know, it has to be zoning appropriate.
So do you want to say, we say, okay to this for R1, but add in on number 13, kennels and home-based daycare or daycare centers and home-based daycare centers?
Yeah, I think
And then
so.
maybe add them in
Conditional,
In the
R2
agricultural,
or.
whatever. Exactly. Yeah,
just be a conditional use as it is now, right? So
right. We don't
people come in
wanna
and-
disallow it,
Right.
but we kind of wanna steer it towards, you know, here or there, more appropriate areas.
Limitation on number of cars too, like, you know, 10 cars outside of a house, but you know, 4
Yeah.
or 5, you know, 4 maybe.
Yeah, four or five cars comes to mind as being, which if I'm not
May have
mistaken,
people, so.
it might be an amount of people that you can have in your home at one time. In other words, it's considered a parking lot. So you have to have a certain amount of spaces provided for the people that you have.
All street.
In your business.
Yeah, yeah. And
So-
all street.
As Christie said, if you have an art gallery, you have to limit the amount of people that you have there. Not that we want to limit somebody's possibility to make money, but we don't want 20 cars out on the streets.
That's true. And then, as far as events, if someone had family reunion, this is not a business, but would that also limit them on the number of cars, the number of noise, or the people making noise?
Well,
That
I
wouldn't
think-
prohibit that, would it?
That's
Well, I
No.
think you have to think in terms of
Not
like,
for the,
right here.
One time-
Semi-public.
Right. and that's more like a one-time, like your grand opening,
Yeah,
you
or,
know what I mean?
family
If you-
reunion, just,
You have to communicate.
yeah.
So I think when you get a license, if they're gonna have a grand opening or something, they're gonna have an excessive amount of cars. It's just a matter of saying, hey, tell your neighbors, make sure we know about it so we can let law enforcement know.
Yeah.
You have to leave a pathway for emergency vehicles and not on a daily basis. This is just gonna happen on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. And then, they go about their business, and on a normal day, you have 4 cars or 5 cars maximum.
number 9 requires the off-street parking.
Yeah.
And then number 10, the frequency of customer visits shall not exceed that of a typical domestic.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Off-street parking shall be provided so that traffic can be handled without a hazard. And that's what we're talking about, so people, emergency can respond to neighbors and people around you.
Now, are you okay with the tutoring, consulting, instruction, music, dance, arts, crafts, and more subjects limited to 6 students, or?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that because that's inside things.
Yeah. Okay.
Same thing with the dance studio. Normally, that's an inside thing.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion with those changes to take before the city council as a recommendation?
Hello. And that's to remove daycare centers serving 6 or less from number 12, and then add in the bottom kennels, daycare centers, and home-based daycare centers to 13.
And what about a maximum square footage of, or something, I don't know how big houses are, but.
Well, this says 30% of the floor space, correct?
30%.
Of one,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like-
1 floor.
Mine's like 1,000 square feet. So it'd be really small.
300,
now he
unless
mentioned
someone,
the accessory building
Someone-
use, do you all want to allow that or not?
I would like to allow that, I think that's fair,
Yeah, like you said, though, as long as it's not only used for that business.
right.
In other words, you can't
And it's
just
not
build,
constructed for that business. right?
Exactly.
Yeah. so I
you
think
can't
that
just build a dance studio as an accessory building.
Right,
It has to
right.
be in a garage, basically, that you can use as a dance studio as well. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the idea of someone coming and building a building for that, but things have been there in place for years, for many people. Not everyone's house was built, a month, a year, 5 years, some people are like old and things were done differently back then.
So we need to strike the end of 5.
And then there's almost says no internal, or external alterations, for accommodations. Maybe have that only with approval, number 4. I is that really limiting, like, what somebody wants to put in a sink or something, or, what constitutes internal or external alterations?
I would think that'll be like
Like a kiln, so we'll add a kiln or electrical.
if I'm a lawn care business and I decide I'm gonna start selling lawnmowers too, just have a whole bunch of lawnmowers for sale on the edge of their road.
Yeah,
Like I see it as being that versus adding a sink somewhere.
yeah, okay. Alterations of the dwelling solely for the accommodation of a home. Yeah, it's just a little arbitrary, but It's not a big deal. I mean, you have to see in people's houses anyway, and people probably can do what they're gonna do behind their walls. I just thought it was, I'm thinking.
Well,
of
it
always
says,
making changes.
with no exception, except one additional outside. So that would be limited anyway for a building permit, would it not? If someone come in and said, hey, I've got a business at my house and I want to add some alterations, you pretty much could just say, well, you can just have one more door.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, what if you need a sink or you need an extra?
Or you wanna
But you don't
upgrade your
charge a building
electrical.
permit.
We don't do permits for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
upgrade a electric for a kiln or something like that. Or I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000, things. that
To run
could
extra plumbing to put in for your shampoo washing
Shampoo bowl.
center.
be- You can.
I mean, that's kind of,
I think rather than no, we have to watch the word no. I think maybe limited might be a better word for that.
Or with approval.
Yeah, limited internal and external altercations with approval upon, asking.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, again, that might be that
I mean, do we even
Pandora
need-
box
I
again.
guess,
Yeah. Oh. I guess there might be
Well,
some.
I mean, it says you
where
can't
might
have,
to-
I mean, number 6 covers the outside of the house, right? I mean,
Right,
There's no
yeah.
externally visible evidence of the
Yeah,
home
I think
occupation.
that's a good one. I like that.
But, do we wanna? Yeah, that's a good question.
and if you're having a dance studio, you can't put mirrors up and a bar on the wall.
I guess, are you, I think the purpose of it being in there is saying.
That you're
You
not
don't want
renovating.
somebody-
You're not gonna,
Different
yeah, you're not gonna.
Buy a house
change
and remodel it.
The residential nature of the
Right.
house.
Is there a way
So
that
that
you
it's a-
can say that, to say that the home still retains its residential as the primary characteristic of primary use of the home is residential?
Yeah, well, it does say that, one of these,
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe just strike that one.
well, it does, and there is
Or
something that
just put
does
with
say that.
approval. Might be a safeguard to have just that with approval.
Well, number 2 probably covers it. Maybe we just strike.
Well, number 6 kind
Yeah.
Yeah, between 2 and 6. It's kind of keeps the integrity of.
But
the
you may need to just extend your parking. I mean, you may need to put on some more driveway to extend parking for it. I mean, I don't think that should be said no, but you obviously don't want to turn your whole entire, let's make turn your whole entire yard into a parking.
Certainly not. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna keep number 4 with limited, with approval, or we're gonna strike it?
Very good.
well, I think we're headed towards striking number 4 and having number 6 and
And 2,
2 kind of handle it. I don't know.
yeah. Always change it. Turns out to be a mess, I guess.
And I'm
Or could
curious,
you
if-
say if it's going to require internal or external alterations that it becomes conditional at that time and you have to submit a permit for it? And then we can see your plans and they either get approved or disapproved. Because that's a difference in that type of business versus an attorney working from home.
Or, yeah, 30% of someone's house turned into an Amazon drop and pickup place, right? And you just have all these boxes going out of 30% of your house, and Amazon trucks coming all day, but they're ones that's covered.
That's
with
covered too.
Traffic, right? So I think there's some safeguards built into this that maybe 4 is just not. But I'll go either way on that one.
sounds like we're leaning towards a plan review person.
So would you like to take back your motion, or do you want to stand with those changes?
I mean,
What if you said no structural change?
I like that.
I like that too.
And that way you can hang the mirrors, you can do the cosmetic, whatever, but nothing structural.
You could even tear down a wall, as long as it's not structural.
That's what a building permit, do we require a building permit that it's not changing the floor plan?
So most of our, I mean, unless it's a whole house remodel, we'll get into methods.
Well, that's what I've dealt with before, unless it's changing the floor plan. You're building on, taking off, then, so it would be no structural changes. I think that's a
And
good
that would
way.
keep it integrity of staying residential.
Mhm.
There you go.
Okay. All right, then.
So then all you have to do is add structural between external and alterations. No internal or external structural alterations. So just add one word in there that would take care of that line. Is that what we're saying? Okay.
Sounds good. Christie, that your vote?
All right, I make a motion to approve that.
Okay, anyone
Second.
second it? Okay, all in favor? Motion passed. Utility substations,
Yeah, and I second it.
oh, yes.
So that was R1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, now we're moving on to.
So is there any changes? Would you keep it the same for R2? The only reason I really even printed R2 allows anything in R1 and so
I say we keep it the same for R2 and R1, and then when we get back to agriculture, that we remove the kennel and daycare home base.
I think so, that's a great idea for agriculture, add that back in, because that's gonna be, you know, what, 5 or more acres is agricultural, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do we need to vote on that as far as, okay,
what is our, do we have any agriculture that sits in the middle of a whole bunch of our work?
someone want to make a motion for the R2 under this non-conditional use occupational?
Yeah,
Christie,
second it.
Harry, all in favor? Okay. Right, so now we can move on to utility substations.
Can we just kind of peek at pictures, of those, and just give you guys an idea, because I know it's like. So,
hold on one second, I'm gonna
Okay.
share my screen with our Zoom.
okay. So anyway, this is, the substation over on, the south side of the gorge. It's perched right on the edge of the gorge. Yeah. It's a lovely sight to look at when you're down in the gorge and see this beautiful homage to Georgia Power. But that being said, they put a fence up around it, basically. It's adjacent, they also took out, picnic area, part of the picnic area that's over there to do this, it was, some of the Georgia Power is supposed to do certain things for public good, with their FERC license and to use our water and to get the right of ways and be able to do the things that they do. So they've come over there, they did put a fence around it. I don't know what they're gonna do about the reduction of the size of that space, because it's a nice space to have picnics. And then the next picture, let's see what I did there. Oh, this is a new one. This is on the corner, the first bend on Watkins Road, and Gene's a little closer to it than me. I've tried to find out from Georgia Power. I've had some dialogue, but it's hard to find out anything from Georgia Power. They're not very open, and there's so many heads you're trying to talk to. So currently it's built that's probably like maybe 50 feet from the road. So what word I got was that they're not gonna do anything. I don't know if that's true or not, but my ideas are a little bit more than what we saw with just a wall. I think this is a state park. There's greenery, there's an aesthetic that the town has, which it even talks about in a lot of the zoning and planning, ordinances. So, you know, to stay in character with that and to not, and okay, so all this is also residential across the street. So my ideas are, there are some guidelines that you can go by to kind of remove some of this from sight a little bit, and actually some safety concerns, like what if there was one of those, the transformers were to blow or something and you're 50 feet from it? I mean, who knows, that may happen, that may not happen, it probably won't, but there are some inherent risk of some safety risks. So I like the idea of opaque walls, landscaping and berms, and there's another view of it. This is just different angles. This is further up Wycamp Road looking at it. And what used to be there was a beautiful oak tree, and none of that. So, and the last picture is, I think there's one more there, maybe two more. Yeah, this is up above it, on the second curve on Wycamp Road. And these are just some of the huge gravel lots where they've kind of just, this is all called special lands, it's zoned as, well, it's really Georgia Power's do what they want to do lands, because I don't think they've come to the city, as I know of, and ever said anything about any of this. Do they present anything to the city to say what they're doing?
No.
They just come in. So Georgia Power can probably get there what they want to get their way, but I think setting up some guidelines through an ordinance to protect future growth, because they are all around us. No one wants to look at the substation. I don't think anyone would want that next to their house.
No one wants to look at it, but everybody wants to use.
Yeah, of course, I totally support the upgrade and the infrastructure though. I just think they have hundreds of acres of land, and I think and I talked to Ed, and I talked to Gene, Ed at the Y Camp, and even Daniel and Melissa, Daniel works for Georgia Power, off the record, you know, they live right across from it, so it's, you know, sure, we want power, of course, but also I don't live up here to listen to dump trucks all day and sirens. I live up here because I like the quiet and the peace and the beauty of it. So I think it would be nice to set something in our zoning ordinances. How much clout we'll have, I don't know. But the PSC regulates licensing and the approval of said substations. But there's also a doctrine of home rule, which gives cities and towns the ability to regulate certain things. So is requiring fences and landscaping around it, is that in our right as home rule? Or does the PSC trump us? And the PSC, believe in the legislation that established Georgia Power's rights to above city and county governments for certain projects. You know, does it disallow us having certain criteria for what we have to look at? Is the question. But I know that Linda has pulled up East Point's substation regulations, and I tried to call them today, but I got a hold of somebody. Actually, I left voicemail and they called me back, but I was at the wrong department. So I didn't really get any word, but as of their website, this is still their ordinance that limits substations. And you could look at telephone towers, and you know, this could encompass a lot of stuff.
Yeah, personally, what comes to mind for me is the old saying of pick your fights wisely. Because I think we need to be careful, with utility departments, because they have so much leeway. The state's given them so much leeway.
So we just like,
We need to be, no, that's not what I'm saying,
yeah,
but I think we need to be very poignant about what we do and what we ask for, or we're just kind of like blowing smoke, and I'd rather not do that. I want, if we And I agree with you, no one wants to look at this, not pretty. You can't make it pretty. But I think we need to be careful about what rules we wanna,
I'm
Try
just
to
asking
push
for
forward.
a simple courtesies to the people who live around that. I'm not asking Georgia Power to tear it down, relocate.
well,
it.
no, you're asking for a buffer.
Yeah.
And that's what
buffer
we're talking
and a
about, here's a
wall.
buffer.
Yeah, so
So-
that they do at least on this side or on my side of the lake, what they've done on this side of the lake and gorge,
Right.
if not a little bit better.
Well, my personal experience with giant corporations like this, is way better asking for something rather than trying to make them do it.
Yeah.
But we need, as a group, I think we need to kind of come to what we agree upon
Right.
and then maybe ask for that.
Yeah, I would do.
You know what I
keep on the
mean?
approach. Just, I would
And
say,
then I'm all for some kind of buffer.
yeah,
But what they're gonna tell you is they need to have access for maintenance.
oh, yeah, that's nothing, that's
So-
nothing unreasonable.
Vegetation is great because it looks great and it's nice and nobody minds looking at the vegetation, but you have to find a pathway to and from their property
Oh, yeah. This is,
to be able to maintenance
yeah,
it.
this sits right on the road. So if you just drive over there, there's nothing I'm talking about to limit access. It's very similar to the first picture I showed with that wall being there. So then they've actually widened the road right on the corner. They added a road in there, which, I don't know how great that is to have big trucks coming out and the kids from Y camps coming down the other way, but it's built right on the curb. So, hundreds of cars go up there. And so I think having a wall, like right now, there's a 9-foot drop on the curb. So if someone hit their temporary fence going around that
Yeah,
curb. so
I think that's a better approach
Yeah. I'm talking
as to
and
safety
aesthetic.
and, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, if somebody, has, out of control vehicle at a high speed,
we're just crossing. passing on that curb.
can that cause a problem?
I got hit some, and when I first moved in my house, me and, guy who's from the Y camp, we hit, our mirrors hit just on the curb, so things do happen, you have to be careful, those are 90-degree curves, there's no stop sign, it's almost like taking hitting an intersection, taking a right-hand turn, so. But I do think, safety is, a part of this, like with the proximity of all this electric equipment to the road. It's not backed off that far and, so I thought it would be, there's not many people over there, Dee's over here. What do you think, Gene?
I'd like to say a few words.
Did Gene say a few words?
Absolutely.
I'm Gene White. And I live, I don't live, but I have a house on Whitecap next to David. And I've been surrounded by the Georgia Power people. Across the street, of course, they're building this damn power station or substation, whatever. And I looked at the one down in the gorge. And these things, they're tremendous
They're big.
and they're ugly. And on top of that, they built a big parking lot in the back of my house with a gravel pavement, whatever, with a ton of equipment back there. I tell you, the property value's gone to hell. And the living conditions, when they crank that substation up, it's gonna hum. You can bet it's gonna hum, and I don't know what kind of emissions it's gonna put out. But I know it's too late to stop it. You can't stop Georgia Power. And I'm assuming you people could not stop them. I assume you had to permit them somehow.
No,
They don't have to be.
Or maybe not, okay. But anyway, I know I'm very in a minority. And I don't know. Maybe they could dress it up or something, I don't know. It used to be a pretty drive up that way, but
Kind of like lipstick on a pig, huh?
Now, I'm very hard of hearing, so I haven't heard everything that David has gone through, but I'm sure he has a lot more to say than I do about it.
I talked to, Edward at the Y camp too, and he feels the same way. He thinks that, you know, I mean, Y camp's been there for 100 and something years, right? And it's changed everything for all of us over there. There hasn't been a courtesy of Georgia Power coming to say, hey, this is going on for 5 years, right? It's a matter of beating on doors and calling and trying to find out who to even talk to. And I finally found like Jeremy Spradlin, who's a regional, manager for Georgia Power in this district, and he's been a really nice guy and forthcoming and a good source of information, but he doesn't even know. He has to call people, and I've had one time them tell me that they're gonna have to use helicopters to bring this stuff in. They never used helicopters. I had another guy from Georgia Power who was in the land office tell me when I was fussing about it that, well, one day we may just sell all this land to somebody. And I said, great, I'd love to buy some. He said, well, we wouldn't sell to you. And that was when I was talking with Jeremy. This is a good cop, bad cop thing. And I looked at him, I said, why not? He said, we'd sell to someone bigger that. So, and I just stepped back and I thought, well, that was a form of intimidation to me to kind of put me in my place and get me to like shut up and be thankful for what I had. But I didn't take that as like something to silence me. I mean, Georgia Power, that's a conservation area as far as how the zoning is written. But, and it's, R1, let's say here, it is the intent of this district to establish and preserve quiet, single-family home neighborhoods as desired by large numbers of people, free from other uses except those which are both compatible and convenient to the residents of such district. That's not my house. That's not what I live in, and it was what I lived in. So I don't want to pick a fight with Georgia Power, but I don't want to sit back and just take it. I would like to work with Georgia Power, but I do think as a town, we should set up guidelines. This is what we would like, instead of just saying, oh, well, what will you give us? A building across the road, a piece of land here. It's nice. It's great they do that, right? But what is that about? When they're not looking at the big picture of what Tallulah Falls is. So that's why this is a big thing for me. I don't think it's a big ask on their part because they do it plenty of places. You get into the middle of Atlanta where you got all these neighborhood associations and they'll build walls and put up murals around these things. They'll still do what they're going to do, but they will make concessions because of groups coming together and governments coming together and asking for this. So I agree with an ask, but also agree with at least put something on paper and say, this is what we would like and be a part of our town. So that one day they don't go up that mountain, clear a strip up
Yeah.
the middle of that mountain,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, I'm all for buffers and for safety and appearance,
Yeah.
Maybe we could just vote to, make a recommendation to the city council to send a nice letter asking for these things. I mean, they're done, but I know that we can't do much for what's already done except to ask.
Well, no, I think we could set up, a zoning ordinance saying this is what we require. They could say no. But we could ask also, but I would say, let's use something like what East Point has. And look at this and then, have a severability clause that if any of this is illegal, then at least some of it would stay in force. So that you have some kind of, we set up like kind of fencing, we put what we want in our ask in an ordinance. And then we can go to Georgia Power and say, hey, we would like this, we don't know, we haven't been heard. However you want to put it, but I don't think Georgia Power has the right to do everything with the idea that they can do anything. They can't do anything. It's just legislated what they can do. I'm not a lawyer and I haven't read the laws which set up the Georgia Public Service Commission. It gives them the rights, but there are things as a town that we can set up. It's, I mean, you're worried about like, you know, a daycare next to your house. Man, I've got dump trucks. There was a guy sitting out there last night at 9 o'clock at night, lights on. I had logging starting at 5 in the morning behind myself.
I've already put forth a noise ordinance that will take care of that.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
already done that. It's sitting on somebody's desk. Already talked about that.
So I would like to put something on paper to send to the council and just put a basic guidelines of what we want.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we've got a.
Jesus.
I mean,
This is my
that-
heated topic right
that's,
here.
I understand 100%. So we're gonna use East Point as an example to ask the mayor and council to set an ordinance to ordain these utility substations or for telephone, gas, electric, etc. No, we're gonna use
We're
this
talking
as-
about buffers, right? We're talking
You know what,
about
buffers
buffers.
and
Landscaping.
fencing,
Yeah.
just, yeah. Something that's not gonna interfere with we can't interfere with their ability to we don't want that, right?
Mhm.
But I would like to see it, so, and just from the first pictures that I had earlier, that Linda had up, from even that little wall, you're hiding, you know, all the stuff at the bottom, you have the stuff at the top. But just like the recent attacks on substations in North Carolina and other parts of the country, you know, if that stuff can't be seen, these, you know, people, whoever is shooting up substations now, it can't go through and do that. So I think there's even something in the state legislature about this now that I was just going through some stuff earlier, but it's not, I think for safety reasons, I think it's something Georgia Power, and maybe they're gonna do it. Who knows? I don't know. But
Well, just being in communication with them, I
Yeah,
think would be the first step to say, hey, we're asking nicely, we're gonna put something in for the future. So we've got a motion on the table. Anyone second it? Harry, all in favor? Motion passed. Okay, the next order of business is to discuss alternative meeting schedule. I know that the second Tuesday of each month would not work for me, so,
Yes, and I apologize. I don't know what I was thinking when I was like, yeah, Tuesdays are great. I can do
One
that.
of our schedules used to be just Wednesdays, right?
It was.
yeah.
yeah, and I work Wednesday, so I can take that day off once a month, so.
Yeah, let's just put it back where it was.
Okay, so you want to say the second Wednesday of each month,
Yeah, 6 o'clock,
6 o'clock? So would you like to make that as a motion?
yes.
Harry makes a motion that we set our scheduled meetings for the second Wednesday of each month, 6 p.m. Someone want a second? All in favor? Okay,
We're gonna have to notify, our co-chairwoman, yeah, Ally, Alec. Somebody needs to
I don't
notify her
think,
of
did
that.
she say she couldn't do certain days? Do you remember?
I think she was good every time.
Well, she was here for the Wednesdays for 2 or 3 times, and she hadn't mentioned a problem with that. But when we started dancing around with different days, I think there was a day or two that,
Yeah.
She can. but she seemed like
She
she
was
was all
supposed to be
right
here
with
tonight.
Wednesdays.
and I apologize for not being here last time. Tony had something to do. All right, so now we would like to open up the floor for discussion. Anyone like to speak on behalf of?
Can I say one other thing?
Yes, sir.
I enjoy the Little Falls Opera House.
That's very good. Thank you.
The power station that's being built, who is that supposed to service with it? Being very large, or is it Raven and Habersham and us, or do we know?
So we're running, the grid is, you know, the grid is connected throughout the whole east coast of Mississippi. So this connects into other power utility companies and also, but it is fortifying our infrastructure in this area. So they're running up a new line, just like, Seed Lake, cutting through the Y camp right now across their fields and you could talk to Edward about that and he's, but it's like, this is what's being done. So it does serve us, but it serves surrounding areas. So everyone on the East Coast, even in Canada, the electricity is shared so that we have a secure, except for Texas. They have their own individual power grid, which fails every now and then when they get there and the summer it gets too hot. As you probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I heard on the news. So our grid is connected to everybody. And the government has, with the infrastructure bill that just passed a few years ago, is where a lot of this money is coming from. So it's doing stuff that's good for our country and good for the stability of our electrical grid. Like I say, I support that. I just think,
I just see it from my deck and it is huge even from here.
oh, you can see it, you're up on the mountain here?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see
I
it.
face it, oh yeah,
Yeah,
huge. I just can't, I just feel sorry for y'all. I mean,
it's noisy.
it's awful.
Maybe we can get Reagan County and Hackentown to help with convincing that there be landscaping and.
Probably the first step is to find out what their plan is. Maybe they have a
I can give
landscape
you
plan.
Jeremy's number. He might be a little more forthcoming to the clerk of the town. And he says he loves Tallulah Falls, and I love Tallulah Falls, and that's why I love to see it stay the beautiful place that I've always known it is.
Yeah.
Or at least as best we can do. And, I'm not trying to pick a fight with Georgia Power, but I also don't think we just sit and let, we should speak our minds and not just take what's given to us. So, yeah.
Anybody else have anything? No? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting? Or y'all got any more discussion? Harry, okay, second,
Hello.
all in favor? Meeting adjourned. So the next time we'll meet will be the second Wednesday, correct?
Second one.
That's the 13th.
That's the same thing, which is the good here. I have to ask him.
I got irritated in the
That's why he said it's always that one.
And do you live around here?
I live up top. At
Like,
940.